this perpetual notion that you just are different, we're much more likely to identify a child as being autistic and in need of support if they were called Jack rather than if they were called Chloe.
It's not acceptable that we've got young people in complete states of burnout because they've experienced trauma through different experiences.
Hello everybody and welcome to This is Autism, the podcast from the North East Autism Society. My name is Kerry Highcock and I'm the Family Development Manager here at the charity. Today we're going to be talking about late diagnosis with Charlie Hamilton. Charlie is an education consultant and coaches late diagnosed neurodivergent women. She also brings a wealth of experience in supporting young people and has a personal perspective on autism that we're really excited to explore today. So thank you so much for joining us, Charlie. So I guess I'll just get straight into the questions. I know you were diagnosed quite later in life. How did it feel when you got diagnosed as autistic?
It's a really interesting question because I've come full circle, I think. Initially, it filled a need in me for validation, for this sense of, oh, that's why. And I think a lot of individuals who have received that identification late on in life will understand that. In a way, it was a relief because it brought clarity to a lived experience that was really quite hectic, quite disrupted, and in many places quite traumatic. I think it provides a narrative for your struggles and the differences that you feel. I think it's very common for late diagnosed, particularly, I mean, in my case, I work primarily with autistic women, but one of the phrases that I hear a lot is I was always on the periphery, or I was always slightly outside of the circle, something to that effect. And I think this identification helps to explain why that might have been. It enabled me to kind of sort of rewrite my personal narrative. So I thought that was great. And for a while, I sat really contently with this identification because simultaneously I had my autism. I use the word diagnosis, but I prefer identification. I had my autism assessment, if you will, and I had my ADHD assessment. And actually, I was probably more surprised by, no, was I? No, it was much later that I kind of sort of did a lot of digging into the autism and ADHD combination, this AUDHD. And I think it's really interesting. Anyway, going on a tangent, again, off on a tangent, I had those assessments and it was good. It was good. I thought I was finally going to find my tribe and I was going to be able to offer an explanation to everybody for all the things that I am. And then the grief started. And it was this sense of, how come they didn't see? How come nobody noticed? You know, what all of those things that I had to endure. Not that everybody doesn't have their own difficulties in life, but things like having to change school, being bullied as a child, having this perpetual notion that you just are different and not understanding quite why. And when I was little, it was something that I could sort of create a really mystical narrative for myself. I used to decide that I was very clearly and obviously an alien visiting planet Earth and observing. My role was to observe everybody because there was no way they were like me. And that made it slightly easier when you're 5. But as you get older, you wake up and smell the coffee literally, and it kind of sort of, I don't know, you just realize that you are just different. So yeah, there was a lot of grief. I think the diagnosis, the identification was a signpost. So it enabled me to kind of then go on and get support for different specific things that I had challenges or notable neurological differences facing. I could do that. But when I say I've come full circle, it's because I've got to this point now where there's so much in the press about how many people are being diagnosed with autism, how many people are being diagnosed with ADHD, quote unquote, that there was a time when I was quite, I don't know if proud is the word I'm looking for, but I was comfortable. I wanted to be assertive in myself, in my own narrative. And I wanted to be able to say, this is me, this is me. I'm autistic and I have ADHD. And I'm also a load of other stuff. And it wouldn't make any difference. And now I hear conversations on the radio. I hear conversations happening in the coffee shops. And it's making it less comfortable.
No, I completely get that, Charlie. That makes a lot of sense. I was listening just this morning at an appointment. The telly was on in a public place. Lots of people were watching it, and it was about ADHD is overdiagnosed. And somebody on there was saying, people with ADHD just need to find out what the challenges are and kind of sort them out, And I thought, wow, oh my goodness, how invalidating for autistic neurodivergent ADHD people, that have took so long to get to the point where, God, now I get it. I understand myself. And you get that bit of validation, and then somebody comes along and almost takes it from you.
Yeah.
I can imagine that's really hard.
And it's more acute, I think, at the moment for some reason. Well, I know what the reasons are, but
it's everywhere. That messaging is everywhere at the moment, and it's certainly something at North East Autism Society we're very keen to dispel. These ideas that we're on a increase and we need to, it's back to the medical model, isn't it? It's almost like we're reversing 100 years backwards in many respects. So when you got your diagnosis, so your official piece of paper that said, I am autistic, I am ADHD, or I am ODHD, if you prefer that term. What helped you? As an adult, what was it that really helped in those moments?
I happened to have earlier on in my life taken a master's in applied psychology and coaching psychology. So I was surrounded by coaches, and it was really empowering. Oh, I hate that word so much, but it was useful to have people who, they weren't therapists. They weren't going to unravel my head. Forgive me, therapist friends, because I've been to many of those over the years. But these were solution-focused, action-oriented now practitioners. And that was quite helpful, working with a few of those that were either specialists or neurodivergent themselves. Personally, I prefer to work with neurodivergent coaches. It just saves time, I think, if anything. So that was good. I dabbled in the autistic community connection. So I think there are loads of things that we all do once we get this kind of identification, or even actually before, really. I think that I have yet to meet a late diagnosed neurodivergent woman who hasn't done more research than your average doctoral student in neurodivergence and autism and how it presents in women and all this sort of stuff. So I didn't really need much. I didn't need sort of the literature, if you like. I needed the community. So I went out to sort of Facebook and joined a few groups, and even locally we've got a wonderful in Thanet, a little plug for them. We've got neurodivergent friends of Thanet, and that was nice. That was going to socials, and but really sensitive socials, so that it wasn't just, the situations were always really beautifully crafted and not overwhelming, and it was just wonderful. And that was nice because you didn't have to. The wonderful thing about being surrounded by neurodivergent people is there's no need to give an explanation. You don't have to do that thing where you apologize before you speak, or you check how things land. You just are. And that is an unbelievable lightness of being. So that was good. There's a lot of self-compassion and reframing, which is a huge part of the coaching that I do now. So there's a lot of revisiting in a sort of a light touch way, situations that have taken place in your life that you're dragging around with you. And it's revisiting those, but in a really, really self-compassionate way. So looking at them through the lens of someone who should have been seen as a neurodivergent person, and in my case as an autistic person, and wasn't. So what would have happened if I'd had my assessment as a little child and my mum had been better informed, or my family knew what to do to create an environment where I would thrive, where I would be sensorially, what's the sort of, I don't want to say balanced, but just yeah, there was just an understanding that wasn't there, obviously. Then I got loads of advice for the disabled students allowance, and then access to work and stuff like that, which has been really good. I'm a very honest person. I'm a very straight talking person, and I always felt like I should never take advantage of anything that society has to offer me. So I've never, claimed benefits for anything that I didn't think that I needed in any circumstance. But access to work is actually the things like the coaching that it provided me, and the assistive, I can't remember the word. You know what I mean. The technologies that are recommended to me were just eye-opening. They were really useful, and they've certainly supported the way that I work and made it easier for me to manage my physical sort of well-being. Executive function support, I think, with the ADHD, that was a huge one for me. And executive functioning, we know that there is no formal definitive definition of what that even means, but I found it very useful talking about things like task paralysis, and really going into what that actually looks like for me as an individual. And also taking away the shame of task paralysis. Just making sure that people understood that it wasn't me just procrastinating and not doing my work, because it's an area that's really, really hard to explain to people. And then reduced camouflaging. I joke that once somebody gets their kind of autism assessment, suddenly everybody appears in Lucy and Yak dungarees and dyes their hair purple and gets some sort of septum ring or something. It's I'm joking because half my friends are like that, basically. But it's almost like, for me anyway, the neurodivergence got cranked up a notch, if you like. You go through this phase of, it can be weeks, it can be days, it can be months, years, God forbid, where you're just discovering what it means for you to live in your true self, to live as an autistic person, and what that autism actually looks like for you. So I would find myself stimming and becoming aware that I was stimming, like suddenly just really becoming acutely aware that when certain things happened, this is what I did. And before, I just thought it was a bit odd or a bit shameful. I squeezed my hands very tightly, and I can remember being a child and doing that all the time. And as I got older, it sort of reduced, primarily because of social circumstance, but I was more able to sort of manage it for the neurotypical world. But now I know that's what I do. That's one of my stims. I don't stop myself from doing it.
Because you don't have to apologise, Charlie, do you?
No, I don't have to apologise. But also there's a kind of, I'm 50 now. So I'm kind of that age where I don't give two hoots, really.
Yeah.
I don't, like, I will tell teenagers off in the street because I just don't care. If they drop litter, I'm going to tell them. It's because, like, so what if they think that I'm a fuddy-duddy or that I'm just a little bit different. I don't care. But I know that it matters an awful lot at different ages in your life.
Yeah, and I would imagine that's took a lot of emotional processing and trauma and recognition of your self-identity to get to the point where you can now say, I am me, and I'm quite happy being me. That takes a lot, doesn't it? It must take
Yeah.
a lot. A lot.
Yeah. And there are days where you just think, oh, why do I have to keep explaining things? Or why do I even have to give a reason? Why can't I just say, I don't feel like going to your Christmas drinks this evening with 40 people that I don't know, because it sounds like hell on earth for me. And it doesn't reflect, it's not a reflection of our relationship, of our friendship at all. It's just that I can't do spaces like that, particularly at Christmas time when it's back to back. You know, and you feel like you should be able to, in society, anybody should be able to say, actually, no, I don't want to go.
Yeah, completely. I think that being unapologetically yourself and kind of not having to mask is so important. And I had a lovely interaction a few weeks ago with my young people that I work with, and we're creating an animation about masking, which is just going to be amazing. I'll send it across to you and everybody listening. But I said to one of the young people in the group, you know, are you masking now? You tell me a little bit about masking. What do you feel like in this group? And this young person said, I've never masked in this group because I can just be myself. And I said, tell me about places you do mask in. And we got talking about school. And she said, you know, Kerry, here, I know I can doodle on my notebook because we give them all doodle notepads. I know that I can get up and have a bit of a skip around if I want to, and nobody, including the staff, which is very important to this young person, is going to say, you know, what are you doing? Why are you skipping around? We just let the young people be who they are in that space. And actually, a lot of the staff are neurodivergent themselves, so we're all usually happily just skipping and doodling around anyway. But I thought, wow, what is it we've created in this small room in the middle of Durham, where we've got a young person that now feels safe to be themselves? I just think that's beautiful. I just think it was just a lovely moment, and I thought, oh, we've got it right in this space, in this moment. We need more of that, don't we? We need more.
Yeah.
Charlie, what do you feel were the barriers for you to diagnosis, or perhaps other women that you work with? What are kind of the main barriers that you think people encounter when they're going for a diagnosis?
I think most people are actually very aware now of some of these. So I guess I'm just going to reiterate what people already know, but a lot of early research was based on boys, and that makes, in layperson's terms, essentially that's, you know, suggesting that we're looking for something that perhaps isn't, we're basing, if you like, assessments on a set of criteria that were defined for a different biology, a different presentation, as they say. So I think, and also the time of when I was born in the 70s, it was very, very rare that someone who, I suppose now, if Asperger's hadn't been kind of subsumed under the umbrella of autism, I think that's probably where I would sit, in many areas of my life. But that doesn't exist as a standalone diagnosis now. And back in the day, my mum can recall people saying, you know, that autism boys are autistic, and it was as cut and dry as that. So I was treated with a number of different medications, but not by a psychologist or by anybody who was in any way supporting my neurology, other than chemically. Camouflaging and masking. So we talk a lot about this kind of sort of, that autistic women kind of adopt strategies so that they sort of appear less autistic. And there's a theory, because again, we have years and years and years of research to do, but the current thinking is that girls are generally quite compliant in a sort of a social context, and are quite good at reading the room and working out what behaviors they need to exhibit in order to fit. And I don't think it's for nothing that there are many amazing autistic actors. I really don't. And I loved theatre because you could just, it was just second nature to be somebody else. So I think the camouflaging and the masking is a challenge. Because if you're holding it together externally in the big wide world with your friends or with your family or with your children, you're breaking down into thousands of pieces when you get home on your own. It's very, very hard to get the support that you need. There is a theory around the female autism phenotype. So basically the way that women present, that we have more acceptable interests, for example. So these focused interests of ours might be perhaps more conforming and not so sort of standoutish, like, I don't know, a specific type of tractor or something, which is a super, super cliched kind of generalization there. But
I once heard somebody say, when a woman or a female lines up washing, it's considered good housekeeping, but if a male was to do it, it would be considered autism. And I just thought that was brilliant, in terms of that gender.
Yeah. I've heard similar kind of anecdotes that it's just, I think it's almost like society is so keen to continue this stereotype that it's boys, boys with this, that it's just not looking, not truly seeing. So there's that. I use that concept very loosely, the female autism phenotype. So the way that it presents, because I actually think that it's an internal and an external presentation. I don't think it's actually gendered. I suspect that, yes, there are probably more girls with the internal phenotype, and more boys with this kind of sort of external exhibition of autism. So it's easier to detect from a younger age. But I don't like necessarily gendering it. Misdiagnosis, I think it's something like 80% of autistic females are initially sort of inappropriately diagnosed. So, I could tick them. Social anxiety, tick. Eating disorder, tick. Borderline personality disorder, we argued our way out of it. Tick. Rather than being autistic. In fact, it was only because I was in the Maudsley for something else and I had a really sharp psychologist that this whole sort of investigation began.
Wow. So if you'd never come across that one person,
yeah, I'd still be there as an outpatient, but being treated for a completely different thing.
And you're one of many, as the research suggests, Charlie, but just on a practical level, I was in a group last year with 6 women, all diagnosed ADHD, and all 6 of them had been misdiagnosed with borderline personality disorder, as you just described, and I just couldn't get over the results of 100% of the people. My God, and the stories and the journey and the trauma that they'd endured by being put on all manner of medications for borderline personality disorder, and wow, it's no wonder people's mental health is so fragile.
I think I read an article by Gina Ripponi. She wrote the Lost Girls of Autism. And I think she said something along the lines like, imagine you were told that teachers, when they were presented with identical vignettes, so little kind of skits of hypothetical kids, were much more likely to identify a child as being autistic and in need of support if they were called Jack rather than if they were called Chloe.
Wow. Yeah.
Identical.
That's powerful stuff. Powerful stuff. And on that note, Charlie, we better take a little bit of a break, and we'll come back and we'll discuss a little bit more about kind of the consequences around a late diagnosis. So don't go anywhere, folks, and we'll see you all in a little moment. Hi, while we're on a quick break, I thought I'd tell you a little bit more about the Family Development Service here at the North East Autism Society. The Family Development Services provides support for families pre, during and after diagnosis and includes a variety of services, including our parent and toddler groups, autism hubs, workshops for families, a dedicated enquiry line, and our resource site as well, which can be found at the family resource site on the North East Autism Society website. So if you go to www.ne-as.org.uk and go along to the family development site, you can find all the information there. Charlie, welcome back to our podcast. Lovely to be chatting to you about late diagnosis in neurodivergent women. My next question for you is, do you feel there was any consequences for you personally of getting a diagnosis so late in life?
I suppose it depends what lens you use to look at this question, I suppose. There were loads of really great things and loads of positives. I think the cost was significant too, not having it, not having that formal assessment. I think my mental health suffered for years, primarily because of just exhaustion, really, and burnout. I've had significant episodes of burnout, and we've discussed this in other forums. This is a different type of burnout to the burnout that we see in an article in a women's magazine. It's a debilitating, can be months, can be years of just devastating exhaustion and mental, emotional, physical. And I think a lot of that could have been prevented. So when I look back, I think that's really awful. I also have an eating disorder and have had since I was 15. And actually, again, this is just how life can be really quite interesting and also really annoying at the same time. It was only very recently that somebody, another practitioner specializing in autism research, actually suggested that something related to that ED could in fact be me stimming using food. And we very loosely unpicked some of it, and it just started another snowball. So that in itself is exactly those moments that I'm just so frustrated. Because if we could have caught that early enough, I wouldn't have had a lifetime of just going between anorexia, bulimia, BD, and just all those things. Years of misunderstandings. I cannot even begin to tell you the amount of times that I've been made to feel very, very stupid, just being isolated, pushed out from the crowd because I've said something or not said something that I was supposed to have said. This isn't the forum for it, but I mean, there are a few moments in my life I still get flashbacks because I can feel the general sense of unbelievable pain and frustration at not being understood. That my intent was never malicious. I was never trying to overstep the mark. I thought I was doing the right thing. And because I don't have anything to explain that, I didn't have the language to explain that, I suffered. The camouflaging cost is related to the exhaustion and the kind of sort of depression and all of that kind of stuff. But it's more than that. It has so much to do with your sense of authenticity and how you live your life and how integral you are, because I often find that one of the most beautiful qualities of many autistic people is this remarkable sense of integrity and justice and fairness. And for me, to accuse me of something that I didn't do is, well, it's akin to shooting me with a bullet, because it's extreme. It's like I'll ruminate on something for weeks afterwards, and it'll be something so, passing, so kind of sort of trivial for another person. But for me, it will be that's me. That's a slight on me. Employment and relationship challenges. I mean, I won't bore you with those, but I've been bullied in the workplace by employers. I've been treated abysmally by employers. I think one employer called me over emotional. Another employer called me a workhorse, and that I was probably better suited for a job in the city because it would be more demanding, and that I was too far intellectually too far ahead, because I was just really efficient. I love Excel, and I like, I've always said to people, I really enjoy what I do usually, because I want to be useful. Again, not to go into too much psychology here, but it's that to fill the void of not ever fitting in completely. I want to always go above and beyond. I want to be seen to help. I want to really help you, because if I really help you, you'll really, really value me. And if you really, really value me, then that makes me whole. That makes me seen. And so that's this constant people pleasing cycle that again, so many autistic people fall into. And then it's just that, like I said before, it's the grief, it's the processing of the lost time. Just, those consequences, just looking back going, well, that was 3 decades. I'd quite like back.
Absolutely. So I could speak to you all day, Charlie, because there's so much to think about here. Every time you speak, I get a different question, but I'm trying to stick to my predetermined questions, and we'll get you back on, absolutely. So, what are the benefits then of a late diagnosis?
There are lots. Acceptance, I think. I finally go, actually, do you know what? I'm just idiosyncratic. I don't even know how I'm sitting at the moment with any form of kind of term, or how other people refer to it as a label. This is just me. And I'm a lot more, I'm a lot kinder to myself post identification, really. And that's a long journey towards self-acceptance. I can look back on things that have happened in the past and I can explain them now. And I think being able to explain those struggles and giving them some sort of terms has been really useful, because that helps you kind of sort of detach yourself somewhat from the pain that you're carrying constantly around with you. So I can look back and I'm much, much more compassionate to little Charlie, and I can say, well, actually, come on, look at the space you were in. I know there's this, I was looking yesterday, there's like these TikToks where these again, not to cause any offense, but they're predominantly coming from Americans, where they're doing this thing where they're loving their little self, and they're having this dialogue with their younger self. And it's really fascinating, actually, because it's all about self-acceptance ultimately, isn't it? And there's a lot to be said for healing your inner child. I can either, depending on the day, find it hilarious or find it very fascinating. But really what I wanted to say is that it gives you an opportunity to look back on your childhood or your teens or your young 20s and go, actually, you know what? That really sucks that you had to experience that. And you had to experience on your own. And you didn't have anyone around. And you really did your very, very best given the circumstances. And you know what? Now is probably a good time to put that one to bed. And it takes a long time to do that, a really long time, and probably hours of therapy, but it's helpful. It is part of that process. And I think that's really good. And then for me, it's about personal advocacy, because I, particularly when I was a teacher, I promised the kids, the neurodivergent children, that I would never shy away from exercising my rights. And I take that very seriously, that claim. So I get involved in lots of different advocacy groups. Obviously, my work through the Autistic Girls Network is part of that. But I'm doing a doctorate at Lancaster in neuroinclusion, particularly in education. So all of that is about making sure that we have access to appropriate support, because I really do believe everybody has potential to have an enjoyable and flourishing existence on Earth. It's society that is preventing them from having that experience, or potentially preventing them. And so we need to work harder to address that. I guess permission to unmask, although it's very difficult. There's lots of literature on this. I don't know if I'll ever fully unmask with somebody who's not sensitive to to neurodivergence, an ally, or they're neurodivergent themselves. I think I would find I find it quite difficult. Like I might want to I do this thing with my fingers where I create like little trees. I wiggle them, and I also crook my neck because I like to hear the sound of the bone. It's really weird. So it's little things like that. So permission to unmask, but maybe not 100% there yet. Yeah, those are the some of the positives. And then I get to meet people like you.
Of course, Charlie, and ditto, absolutely. This is honestly one of the best parts of my job, and I completely get as well that promise that you made to the young people, because I kind of did a similar thing in terms of, I want societal change for you. I want it to be better. It's not acceptable that we've got young people in complete states of burnout because they've experienced trauma through different experiences. And I was clearing out my office the other day, actually, and I found a little card from 5 years ago. It's a Christmas card that I've kept off a young person who I'd worked with. And she'd wrote on it, just very small in the corner, it said, "Thank you so much for giving young people like me a voice." And honestly, as I say that, I get little goosebumps. And I've kept it, I've popped it up on the shelf because I was like, oh, that is what it's about. That is it. That's that moment, and for anyone that works in that field or supports autistic young people, children and adults, when you get that moment, it's like, that's what it's all about.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. It's in society, it's about that. I think that we have an obligation to create some sort of space, not necessarily speak on behalf of, because I think everybody has ways of communicating. It might not be the way that we want, but they have ways. I think it's about creating the avenues for people to be seen and be heard if they wish. I think it needs to be there. Like, things need to be inclusive.
1,000,000% behind that one. The last question, but it's quite a big question, and you've probably got a lot to say about this one. Well, I know you will have, but I guess to summarise, what do you wish society understood about autistic women?
Empathy is bi-directional. So non-autistic people also lack social insight into autistic culture, I think. And I think empathy is a two-way street. So I think that's that whole Damien Milton double empathy problem. I think it's really, really important that people understand that it's almost akin to different cultures, and that we need to sit with the other culture and be generally receptive to that culture in order to be able to communicate, to engage in any meaningful way. And that applies so obviously when we talk about languages, but it also applies for neurologies, physical abilities, everything. If you want to understand, it's either walk a day in my shoes. It's ask me what it's like to be me. Ask me what I like. Ask me what the terms are that I like to have used around me. Get involved. So I think that's important. Empathy is bi-directional. I think this idea of difference as opposed to deficit, I think, is hugely important. I constantly reframe people's narratives. Often when I'm having conversations, people will say, "Oh yeah, it was a bit weird." No, he wasn't weird. No, he wasn't. He was different. He was different. The way that he expresses emotions are just different. He didn't want to sit in a room full of people. Yeah, so what? We've got to get away from wanting everybody to be the same. Camouflaging and masking is hugely costly. I think people often underestimate what that entails. And I think it would be helpful if people read up on that a little bit more, because it's not just you sitting on your hands so that you don't twiddle your fingers. It's everything. It's tolerating the light levels, the sound levels, it's just, yeah, I think people could really afford to spend a little bit more time educating themselves. The female autism phenotype, I think, is important, but it's that internal presentation I think is really important. I think people need to understand that what we talk about when we talk about internal and external are just ways of manifesting your difference. So some people might be more externally focused, so they might be likely to express themselves verbally or make a noise of some sort, or perhaps they're physical, much more physical, whereas the internal might be more compliant, more inward facing. So they might be more, they're quieter, often go unnoticed, hence, we go back to the diagnosis rate. Intersectionality, I think, is really important. It's an area that I'm not a specialist in, but I'm definitely interested in. I think it's really important to look at autism alongside other identifying characteristics and how that experience is lived by people. I'm particularly interested in faith and autism. I think that's a really, really interesting area. Systemic change ultimately is what's needed. So, it's training for as many professionals as you can find to be able to understand autism in all of its manifestations. I think we need to get towards this super inclusive society where people shouldn't need to say, by the way, in front of my entire class, I just need to let you know that I've got ADHD or I'm autistic. You shouldn't need to do any of that. We know enough now to have a baseline that is super inclusive. And that is where I would like us to get.
Well, thank you so much, Charlie, for coming on the podcast. And to all our listeners, thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions or comments about anything you've heard, then please get in touch with us at info@ne-as.org.uk. You can follow the North East Autism Society on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. And the podcast is out every month, so please subscribe to This Is Autism. And just a big shout out for our lovely Charlie, who does some incredible work as well, as which we didn't get a chance to touch on really, but I know you do a lot of coaching for women who are late diagnosed neurodivergent women, and I know your work is incredible. So I'm giving you a shout out, Charlie, because I know you're just wonderful at what you do. So go and find her if that's what you're looking for. Thanks.